Good morning, everybody. This is Jack Gleason with Startuptrading.com. It is June 30th, 2020, last day of the month here, 9 o'clock in New York. For economic data, this morning we had the gross domestic product out of the Canadian dollar at 8.30. Chicago PMI is going to be at 9.45. And then we're going to have CB consumer confidence at 10 a.m. At 12.30, Fed Chair Powell will be testifying. And then this evening, we're going to have manufacturing index for the yen and manufacturing PMI as well. Building approvals for the Australian dollar, 9.30. And then in the overnight session, just a lot of yellow star news events, a lot of PMI news events out of the European zone, commodity prices out of the Australian dollar. And then the ADP non-farm employment change will be at 8:15 tomorrow, as well as the ISM manufacturing PMI. And then MPC member Haskell will speak at 7 a.m. for the Great Britain pound. So nothing too major outside of Powell testifying that'll be important here. So let's take a look at the indexes. I do want to actually start off with oil today and just talk about where oil is. I'm going to go to a higher time frame 5-year weekly chart, and we have run into what is a full 50% retracement short from the highs of 2018 to low. Believe it or not, I just noticed this the other day, but this is this higher time frame 50% retracement short. We had a perfect reaction. Now this is going to be an incredibly important technical level moving forward for oil. Now we have the previous lows of 2018, the gap down, the final destruction, right, of oil that was in 2020, and a full 50% retracement short that goes back 2 years. This target is -10, which we've seen negative targets hit in oil, so it'll be interesting if we see another one. We saw -$40 in oil. So we traded that 50% retracement a week ago today, and that was Tuesday of last week. And then we had that high of Tuesday to what was the low of last Thursday run into its 50% retracement on Friday. We ran into that 50, we sold all the way off. We did break the opposing 61 and never held. And then we ran up back to the top of the range. We stuck a 61.8 of the short yesterday, and we began selling off in our overnight session. That 50% retracement short traded once to target, and then it actually set up in a full 50% retracement short again and completed targets, and we have just traded that next 50% retracement short at 39.20. I think that was front run by 1 or 2 ticks there, but that is our next 50% retracement short. We are bearish below a 39.90, bearish below 39.90 with a higher time frame profit target all the way down at 36.03. So these are some really important levels. Now, if I go out to the daily chart, there's actually a extension from the high going back to May 7th to high. This traded once to profit target, and then the same anchor new high, that 38% retracement lines up with the -23% profit target of the short setup. So we have some confluence down there at the $36 level. That is where I'm expecting oil to make its way before we actually get any bit significant higher. But it's really important to note where we came off of the reaction. It's a gap fill, huge gap fill. Okay, it's a massive 50% retracement short, and it is the previous lows of 2018. So a lot of resistance here. And we're just going to be in a consolidation pattern until we complete this profit target to the downside. So I wanted to start off with that here today. And then I'm going to start off with the precious metals next. This extension for gold is quite interesting. Now, you have to go to a 5-minute chart to see it. We have support levels below, but we have so far continued to defend what is a extension that goes back to Friday. There was a massive reversal on Friday, and then we began a high to high series from 1765 to high. Now that traded yesterday. Just pull this over. We traded the 50, So far we've stuck this 61.8. If we can break above the 50% retracement short for the day, which is at 1783, we got to break above 1783. That would revalidate this support. If we don't revalidate this support I would expect us to get below to 1772 to 1770. So this is going to be an important market to watch in the morning, whether we're confirming this support level or if we're just breaking down. There's no, when we get into these fourth tests and stuff, there's not a way to, where you don't want to actually place an order to get long, because you want to see these buyers come in and then look for the pullback. But that's going to be something to watch here for gold. Moving on to silver. Two support levels I'm looking at below. One is the 50% retracement going back to the lows of June 15th. That's the higher time frame level. That's at 1765 down there. And then the 50% retracement long from the lows of June 24th, the high, is a 1785 half. So those are the two levels I'm watching. Other than that, there's really not much to do here in silver. Moving on to the ES. Now, I have a higher time frame support down here at like this 3003 to 3000 level, where I would expect we have a leg start there from yesterday. That's where I see the bottom of the range here today possibly getting put in. And what's important to note is on Friday, we came out of what was a 50% retracement short, and we sold off all the way to the bottom of the range. There was this trend line here that we kind of bounced off of in the morning, and then we ran right back. And what is the high exactly? The high exactly is the 38% retracement of that 50% retracement short. So I am still leaning to the bearish side here in the indexes. You could draw a trend line here. We just continue to fail from this. Our downside target would eventually be 29.71, but I expect a little bit more of a range here. Topside resistance, if we do break out, 30.75 is going to continue to be difficult to get above. It's at old 50. There's a couple of leg starts there. It's a support we broke down from. And then the 3,000 level, 3,003 to 3,000 would be support. So those are the two zones where I see a lot of potential participation. Now, one thing to watch for the long side, we had a rally out of the lows yesterday. We had a rally out of the lows, and we actually began an extension from 29.96 quarter to high. This traded in the morning. It came right off the 38% retracement at 11.20. We made a new high, and then we retested that same extension going into the close and completed it. It was a 30.23. We rocketed to 30.50, straight up 25 points. That same anchor new high has had a little bit of participation here. This is going to be the level to watch. This 50% retracement, 30.27. If we start breaking through those levels here in the morning, you could see we were bid off this 38, and then we're coming right back down. If we get an opening drive lower in the morning, it's going to be right to that 30.27.75, and then it's going to depend if we're holding above this 61.8 at 30.20 going into the lunch hour. There's a possibility that we do get that squeeze to the top side of the range again. And this target, if we do hold this support zone, would lead us up into 30.74. The top side resistance is 30.75. So we have a profit target completing as well as a resistance level coming into play for the S&P 500. Moving on to the Dow. So there is also this 50% retracement short in the Dow, and that's going back to the highs of June 9th. Now, this broke over and over and over again, but we never closed above that 61.8. And I wanted to just leave this up to just, have it as a reference, because that 25,997 level is definitely resistance. Now, one of the things you'll notice is this 38.2 is getting sold into, and you can also look at what is the 50% retracement of last week's high. So it was Tuesday's high to Thursday's low that traded. Okay, Tuesday's high to Thursday's low traded, and then we rotated down. We didn't quite hit those profit targets, but you could draw that same high to low and just see here's this resistance level that's going to be very hard to get above this entire zone up here. And I have no support until the bottom of the range, but it's important to note this still has a bearish bias because there is a downside target based on this 50% retracement short, and that downside target is 24,698. 698. All right, moving on to the Nasdaq. Now, the Nasdaq completed a short target. The Nasdaq had a 50% retracement short from what was the high of last week, Tuesday to low. That completed on the Sunday night open. Now, we drove through those Sunday night lows yesterday morning off the open. And that was the divergence. The Nasdaq was getting new lows. The S&P was not getting new lows. The Dow was not getting new lows. So the Nasdaq was actually showing some relative weakness compared to the other indexes. Now that same high to low, well, guess what? That's what we came into as our resistance. And we also just this previous low. So we continue to see sellers at these 50% retracement shorts. Now, as far as support goes, this halfway back long from the lows of the 15th to high is still in play. And that's this zone here. I'm just going to bring this over a couple of days. So that is a 98.34. 98.34 is still the full 50% retracement long in the bottom of the range. That's where I would expect support to come in for the NQ. Moving on to USD JPY. Yesterday we had a long complete. It was Tuesday's low of last week to Thursday's high. It was front run on Friday, a perfect 4 pips. At the time I had mentioned a 4 pip front run usually means a pretty quick completion. Well, we got that pretty quick completion, and that completion was a 107.77. The next measured move is Friday's low to high. Now, you can see what are our highs. We continue to just get rejected from that old profit target, and the next measured move is going to be a 107.33. If we don't get the 107.33 and we continue to push up and go move through highs, there will be an extension that will set up, but when that time comes, we'll analyze that. 107.33 on support for the USD JPY. AUD/USD, bottom of the range we've just traded. This bottom of the range has been holding for like 3 weeks now. Now, we had this 50% retracement short from last week's high on Tuesday to low. We never made it back up into our 50. We have a leg start from lows. There's a possibility that there's a series that begins, but there's nothing really to do on the higher time frame unless you're waiting for that resistance level at 69.07. But we could rally all the way from where we are to 69.07. That's about 50 pips. So we could run 50 pips up into that resistance from these support levels, but we have come off the bottom of the range, and this 68.40 level, I mean, we held it Tuesday, we held it Thursday, we held it Friday, we gapped down last Sunday, drove back above it, held it. So you can see that for whatever reason, this 68.40 does continue to be some pretty aggressive support. We do have another leg start out of this lows. You can go to the 5-minute chart and you can see we have a halfway back that is on its way to completion. So if we get this completion, there would be a next measured move in the Aussie dollar. Moving on to the euro, also bottom of the range here. The halfway back short from the highs of the week is going to be a 112.39. I have no resistance till 112.39. So that is a 50% retracement short for the week, 112.39, and no resistance until then that I know of. And GBPUSD, this is a little interesting the way this set up. I had this zone. I want to go to the daily chart. This is actually a great daily confluence support zone. So if you go back to what was the end of May, you had this daily leg start long, and you actually had a daily leg start short right before that. So I had just chalked up this zone here between the top of the short and the bottom of the long setup. And on top of that, we had this profit target completing at the 122.50. So you had a daily leg start long and a daily profit target coming into play. Well, that was at 122.50. Yesterday, we hit those 122.50s and we rallied all the way back into what was the 50% retracement short for the week, Monday, Sunday high to the low. And then we've come back down. We've tested it again. No resistance till we get back up to that 123.20, but that higher time frame short, the next measured move from Wednesday's high of last week, the low does not come into play till the 123.96. So if we do not stay below this 123.20s, there's a possibility that we squeeze all the way back up into the 123.96, which is 100 pips from where we're currently trading. The USDCAD, there really isn't much to do here. We're building this wedge. If we break down to this wedge, the next support I would have is like the 136.32. There's a daily trend line here. If we break out of that trend line, there's a possibility we get in a squeeze back up into the 139 to 140 range. But as far as a new opportunity, the only thing I really like right now is the long all the way below at 136. And just remember, also we had that Canadian GDP. not much of a reaction to the Canadian GDP number. So numbers must have been exactly in line with what people were anticipating, but it could definitely be something to watch out of that now that we've had that GDP number. Alrighty, that's going to wrap up this morning's trade plan. Just to kind of reiterate, definitely pay attention to the way oil's trading here because we're coming out of such important resistance levels. The dollar currencies, the AUD, euro, and pound do look like they're coming out of the bottom of the ranges here. And the USD JPY, the 107.33, looking like a great support level. And then if we can confirm this support level by breaking above 1783 in gold, then we could possibly have a run into the end of the day in gold all the way up to maybe 1790 levels. So that's going to wrap up this morning trade plan. If you enjoyed this content, please give this video a thumbs up. Feel free to share with anybody who you think is interested in learning more about futures and technical analysis. Everybody trade safe. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to share all of my levels with those of you guys who are in my room. So if you're interested in learning more about futures, also click the links below. Check them out. Take care and have a good one. This video a thumbs up. Feel free to share with anybody who you think is interested in learning more about futures and technical analysis. Everybody trade safe. Have a wonderful day. I'm going to share all of my levels with those of you guys who are in my room. So if you're interested in learning more about futures, also click the links below, check them out. Take care and have a good one.